Hi, this is Mary Greendale, and welcome to Just Thinking Zoom Style. It's not my favorite way. So it's election season in Holliston, which is hard to believe because this COVID thing has got everything so screwed up. But you still need to know what's going on and who the candidates are. And today I'm going to interview one of the candidates for the school committee, Joan Shaughnessy. Now, there are 3 candidates running for 2 seats. And at the end of this film, we will talk about the details of the town election, which changed because of the COVID. But right now, we're just going to bounce into the interview with Joan and ask her the same questions that I'm asking the other 2 candidates so that you're able to compare what their responses are and get an idea of exactly how you think about what they have to say. So these interviews usually run around 20 or 25 minutes, and hopefully you'll be able to catch all of them and make your own decisions. Joan Shaughnessy is the candidate we're talking to today, and Joan is an incumbent who is running for her 3rd term. So welcome, Joan. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
And thanks for agreeing to do this. I know that we're all living in this surreal world, and we all have our own issues we're dealing with. So I want to paint a picture sort of the background of what's going on for the schools right now and the school committee. So it's likely you're going to be doing a search for a new superintendent because Dr. Jackson is moving on. The committee's in negotiations with the teachers union. We're in a shutdown and we have nobody in the schools, and learning has moved home. We have no idea what the fall is going to bring in terms of physical plant or anything else. We've applied to the state for school building assistance for a survey on whether or not we need a high school. If there are classrooms there this fall, we had plans to change the times of the opening of school. And last but far from least, of course, is the money. We're running out of it. So against all of that, I just want you to explain why you decided to run. Well, that's really not the question, but seriously, you gotta be looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, why did I say I'd do this time? But anyway, so just tell me what made you run in the first place, why you're running for re-election, and what you think your biggest accomplishment has been.
Well, thank you. You summarized those things very well, and I can think about 5 more off the top of my head that is cluttering my inbox and taking up my time on Zoom meetings. I ran initially because when my husband and I went to go put children in school, schooling was never something we talked about before we had kids. And I went to private school, and I just assumed, parochial school, I just assumed that we would be looking that way. And he had very strong feelings about public education. And I thought, well, if my children are going to be in public school, they're going to be the best darn public schools that they can be. And so I got very involved with PTO, and I was PTO president in the elementary level for about 3 years. And I got very involved in the schools. I was on the Miller School Council. Every reading night, math night, I was there. And then I realized that to make a real impact, I would have to run for school committee. And I felt as though my background in financial services and as a project manager before that, I would be well suited to this job. Fast forward 6 years, it's a very different life. And I want to continue because it's hard work. You have to really come up a curve when you first are elected. So there's all sorts of things that are required to make good, thoughtful decisions, budget decisions, policy decisions. And you have to know how Chapter 70 works, how 9C works, how the circuit breaker for special education funding. All of that takes a long time to accrue that knowledge. And now is not the time for me to take my knowledge and go home, because we not only are we in a pandemic, which is unprecedented, and we have to make budget decisions. And what sounds like, oh, that might be a good idea. Oh, you can't do that because Chapter 70, Section 15 says this. So we have to make decisions efficiently and effectively having gained all that knowledge. Having said all that, our superintendent is leaving. So that will leave a institutional knowledge vacuum. So I really feel as though this is the time to, for those of us who have had this knowledge and this experience and work the finance committee, or roll our sleeves up and do this together.
Okay, we had a little glitch in there. I don't know how your Wi-Fi is, but you know,
I'm in Brentwood. My Wi-Fi is terrible.
Oh.
It's been fine in school committee meetings. I haven't dropped out.
All right, well, we'll just forge on.
Okay.
So what skills do you bring to the school committee, and how do you think that those skills have helped?
I'm a very thorough learner. I'm not a quick study, I'm a thorough learner, and I'm a researcher. So I think what I bring is, I bring a thoughtfulness to decision making. And that is, I have to think of it from all of the aspects. Not just how it affects, the most important part of our decisions is how they affect the students. That's the number one goal. That's the number one motivation. So, but you also have to look at, well, how is that going to impact this revolving fund or the general operating fund, or can that be in capital? How is this going to affect our standing in the community? Is this measuring up to the community's expectations? So, and then there's personnel issues. You know, is this going to hurt morale? There's so many things to think about with every decision. And I feel as though I'm a thoughtful, research-based decision maker.
So as a parent and as a member of the school committee, how are things? What's going on? What are things in the district? I mean, I can only imagine.
Things, we're in a lot better shape than a lot of other districts. And we're a lot better shape because we were ahead of the curve on one-to-one devices for our students. So for example, I teach in the Framingham Public Schools, and they're not on one-to-one at all grade levels. So they had that whole process of rolling it out and then getting the students up to speed on technology. So that was huge in that district. So in our district, we already had that. Kids had the aptitude. At the lower grades, there was a little bit of a learning curve. Things are bumpy. Things are bumpy everywhere, but they're bumpy here. We just had to hire a new student services director, and with the the superintendent is departing. So there's a lot going on over here, but I think from the student experience, things are not as bumpy, that they're smoother. It's every day is a challenge. And we get emails every day, you're not doing it right, the work is too much, it's too little, it's not flexible enough, it's too fluid. So everybody is coming from a place of uncertainty and anxiety. So it would be foolhardy of me to say, oh, everything's great, we got this, because that's just not true.
Yes,
We're working on it, and we have very capable people working on it, but it's a process.
Yeah, I am sure. So on what's your biggest concern right now for the district? You know, what is there are so many. You can pick any one of them you want.
I know. Safety is my biggest concern. We need to get these children back into the classrooms. What is happening now is the best we can do under the circumstances. But real learning is not going to take root until we get back into the classrooms. It's a completely different, I mean, I'm on both sides. I've been in front of the classroom and I'm sitting behind Chromebooks behind my kids now. So that is my biggest concern, is keeping the children forward in their learning, however that may look. And my priority is to bring them back to school safely. I am high risk for this virus, so I am not somebody who is putting this, is willy-nilly or taking this lightly. If I get this disease, it could very well kill me. So having said that, I am hoping that we find a way to bring them back in, even if it's a hybrid schedule or a staggered schedule, that we could bring them into the classrooms so real deep learning and human connection can happen. Because so much of school is that human connection, particularly at the younger grades, the preschool, kindergarten, and all levels of Placentino. It's how to play in the sandbox together, and we can't do that if we're not in the sandbox.
So how do you think the committee will, explore that concern or deal with that concern?
Well, the first thing we have to do is wait for what the state says. So good, bad, or indifferent, DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, they're not going to release guidelines until June 15th. And those guidelines are only going to be as forward-looking as the data they have. So no one knows what the virus is going to look like in September. So my guess is that they're going to have contingency plans. So if these numbers are this is what it'll look like. If these numbers are this is what will look like. So we've already begun the process of contingency planning. It's not as transparent as some people would like, but at this point, anything you put out could be hashed and construed. And so the administration is doing the hard work, and we will bring it, the school committee is really pressuring them to bring it to the public as soon as it is practical.
Yeah, that's a tough line. I have heard some concern by parents and teachers and stuff that, we're the ones that are going to be affected directly and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, okay.
And money. What if we have to buy PPE? What if we have to buy masks? What if we have to install hand washing stations? Where is this money going to come from?
Yeah.
At a time where local receipts will be down and state receipts are already down for FY20. FY21 is a crapshoot. Yeah.
Well, given that the next 2021 school year might be disrupted by all of this, what are you looking for success for yourself in that next 3-year term? I mean, this is a really tough one, I know, given the condition.
The most important thing we can do as a district is, I always revert to my first job, and my first job in this world is a mother. So I feel very passionately about mothering children, parenting children. Children shouldn't worry about adult things. That has always been my passion. So protecting these kids, preparing them, supporting them during this time is the most important thing we can do. So if at the end of 3 years, we have children who are not riddled with anxiety, we've made some progress in forward curriculum. The curriculum and the learning is very important, but to me, their well-being is more important. Every child is going to come back to us different than when they left. Everything is going to be different. How do they fit into this new world? They might be shy, they might be uncertain of themselves or uncertain of how to readjust. And so at the end of 3 years, I would like to think that we have not established a new normal, but help our students assimilate to a new normal in a healthy way and to alleviate their anxiety about it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Assuming that we're going to open school and people are going to go into the buildings, do you think you should move forward with the idea to change the times this fall, or would the school committee reconsider that?
We voted on this last May, so the planning has been done to make the changes, and the science of sleep has not changed. So I don't think a delay makes any sense, because whatever happens with the staggered schedules or the hybrid, they can be adjusted to the times in the framework that the school committee voted on last May, because particularly in light of the stay-at-home advisory, because think of all the teenagers who have been able to sleep until 9, their earliest class is at 9, and now all of a sudden they have to be awake, alert, and ready for 7 o'clock. That was a virtual impossibility before. But now oh my gosh, all bets are off. So no, I don't think a delay in that, because there's so many moving parts anyway, that this one adjustment, for families, it was always going to be an adjustment. And now we're going to have to adjust to whatever it looks like, but the science of sleep hasn't changed.
Okay, so let's talk about the superintendent. What do you think we need in the next one?
We need a listener. We need a communicator. We need someone who is very good at budgets. Our administratively speaking, our administration expense per student is in the bottom decile, which is a positive thing. So we are in the top 10% of districts who spend the least amount of money administratively on students. So that's not teaching, that's central office, that's just administration. And we're proud of that. And that's a really hard thing to do. So our next superintendent needs to be creative and be a visionary, because we're not a traditional school district. We have French immersion, we have Montessori, we have a lot of project-based learning, and we started with about 4 or 5 years ago with a baseline of social emotional learning so that children could be ready to learn. So we need a superintendent who not only embraces these philosophies, but has a vision to move them forward. We started last year, but it really started to get legs this year with Vision of a Graduate at the high school level. And that is important work that will reshape everything. It'll reshape curriculum. It'll reshape how we conduct classes. It's really important work. So we need somebody who has the cerebral qualities we need for an educator, and also the budget piece, and a big thinker. We need a creative thinker. But the most important thing, I think, is we need a listener and we need a communicator. That's what this community demands, expects, and deserves.
Okay. Do you think there's anything coming out of the stay-at-home experience that will actually move forward and continue in the future of education here?
We've figured out how it's sort of, we were talking before we were on camera, Mary, about, I never thought I'd miss a meeting, but an in-person meeting. But, but I think that we've learned that we don't have to do things this way. We don't have to do this in this model, in this classroom. It doesn't have to be this way. So if nothing else, this stay-at-home time and this stay-at-home remote learning has taught us to do things differently and to do things perhaps more efficiently. And it's okay. It's working. It's okay. Some of it's working. The in-class instruction, there's no replacement for that. But I think it has taught us all to be a little more grateful for the in-person experience. And I think that the use of technology will help us chart a course forward where we can leverage it more. And we can do things more efficiently than our traditional write out a paper and hand it in.
I do think that everybody's developing a fluency and a comfort level with tech that perhaps not everybody had, and that has to be an improvement for them as individuals, if not collectively.
Sure.
So longer term, what's your biggest worry moving forward?
I worry about a lot of things. I worry about, one of the things I do worry about is I worry about meeting kids where they are. I worry about our special education programming. I worry about our buildings. I'm particularly worried about the high school. As we're doing this work, this very thoughtful work of Vision of a New Graduate, does the model of learning that needs to happen to develop this graduate, do we have the bricks and mortar to support that? I always worry about money. I worry about our professional staff. I worry about our ability to compensate them fairly and competitively. And I worry about the town. I worry about the town. There's only so much new growth left. And those of us, well, all of us, want to preserve that sort of quaint, agricultural roots vibe in the town. But that really does a number on new growth. So we want to preserve the character of the town, but we also want the revenue that comes with new growth. So all of those things, and I worry most, like I said, going back to what I said originally, I'm a mother, and I worry about kids. I worry about not my kids, I worry about their friends, I worry about our students, I worry about my students. I miss my kids, not my children, my kids, my school kids, I miss them ferociously. So I worry about them, and I worry about their well-being more than anything.
Well, I'm sorry you're worrying so much. Now, before you got involved with being on the school committee, you said you were active and involved with activities and so forth. Were you also involved with town elections and town meetings so that you were familiar with them when you launched?
Yes. The week after I turned 18, I registered to vote, and I waited a week because my best friend turns 18 a week after me, and I registered to vote. And I was 20 years old, and I ran a campaign for state representative. I've always been active in politics, and not just politics, but in what's going on around me. My parents fostered that about us. I'm one of 10 children, and we sat down to dinner at night, and we would talk about what was on the news. What was in the newspaper. We would talk about things that affect us. So that has always been a curiosity of mine. I have not missed a town election. I have always gone to town meeting before I was elected or not. And those of us who are stalwarts, those of us who go every time, and we're texting our friends and neighbors saying, we can't get 100 people here. Hello, we need a quorum. It's disappointing, but it's about priorities and about where you can, and some families, you stay home with little kids and the other one goes, and you watch it on HCAT. I love town meeting, and I love town meeting because I have my degree in history, and to me, this is like the purest form of Plymouth we can get. All coming together and not being behind the keyboard and being brave, but saying what you think and what you believe to your neighbors. It's the purest form of democracy that can be. Mark Schultz will be so proud of me right now. It's the purest form of democracy there is. And I mean, it gets long, but it's the best.
Yeah, I agree with you. I happen to be one of the ones that agrees with you. There are a lot of people that are going to say, oh my God, those people should get a life. But at any rate, so the last thing for me is, so the governance committee that has been established is looking at, any changes or anything else like that might improve attendance at town meeting, so that we don't just have, 10% of the voters or 1% of the voters actually who are actually there. Any thoughts yourself? Just
It's interesting because those of us that go, we're sort of like, well, if 100 people are making a decision for 10,000, then good for we 100 who showed up. But I do think that is a little short-sighted because there are people who can't physically make it there. People who have autoimmune, people who have, if my mother lived in Holliston, she would have a really hard time going to a town meeting. Yeah. So I think we could probably leverage some of the learning that we've experienced in the last 2-3 months with virtual attendance. And it's my hope that we can leverage some of that in a meaningful way. That will require some town charter changing and things like that. But I think that there is a way that people can participate without having to be physically present. And I think we're going to see that in a lot of things going forward. But I think town meeting is definitely one of those things.
Interesting. Okay, I have something to look forward to there. All right, so is there anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
I just want people to consider what's at stake here. We have to figure out a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts, and you don't You don't know what you don't know. And so when you're in it and you've been in it for a long time, the magnitude of what's happening is heavy. But if you're not in it, it's hard to put yourself in that position. So unless if there was ever a time to vote for an experienced candidate in any office on the local level, this is it. We know where, I don't want to use this term, but it resonates. We know where the bodies are buried. We know, we have the institutional knowledge. We know the players. We've built relationships with the FinCom and the select board. This is a time for us to all pull together based on those trusting relationships and make effective decisions efficiently. This is not a time to onboard, and in all deference to my very qualified challenger, another year would be fantastic for her to join. She's thoughtful, she's smart, she's got 3 kids, she lives in town. But this just isn't that year. And I'm not saying that because I'm the one running, I'm saying that because of what's at stake right now. We have to get the budget figured out. You have to understand how Chapter 70 funding works. You have to understand the magnitude and unpredictability of 9C cuts. You have to understand how the circuit breaker for special education works. You have to understand union contracts and what you can and cannot do. This would be a terrible time to try to train somebody in all of that when we have to make decisions quickly. So that's all.
Okay, is that all right? Okay, well, thank you. And before I just wanted to go back to the election itself. Now, if you haven't voted already, what? Voted already? How could you vote already? See, the problem that we have is that the town election has been moved to June 23rd. But it's only going to be open from 12 to 4. And the reason it's going to be open such limited hours is to limit the number of people that are in the space, both the poll workers and voters. Mm-hmm. And according to Elizabeth Greendale, the town clerk, she would be fine if we got everybody voted ahead of time. That would be 10,000 of us, and that would be a remarkable election. But if you are prepared to vote ahead of time, you just have to go to the website of the town, and there is a page that you go to. It's right on the front. Just click on it, follow it through, and you get an application. You fill out the application, you mail it to the town clerk's office. They will mail you a ballot. And then you fill out the ballot and mail it back. Now I want to go back and clarify, because when I said you can mail the application for a ballot, you can even email that. The final ballot has to be mailed in snail mail so that they can actually document it, all right? So this election's different. You could vote tomorrow if you just start that process and get your ballot. And the ballot comes right away because I already asked for my ballot. But in the event that you can't and you don't and whatever, the election day is June 23rd, and the time is from 12 to 4 at the high school gym. You will find it laid out completely differently to try to accommodate spacing and all that other stuff that everybody has to deal with. But let's keep the attendance there maybe as low as possible to expose people to the COVID virus, and let's vote ahead of time. Order your ballot, get it taken care of. So that's my pitch. I hope these interviews help you. Thank you, Joan, and we'll see you, well, if not on a Zoom meeting, I hope maybe I'll see you as I walk by on the street or something. Take care, be safe, bye.